the misconception is not telling in their advertising how much effort it's going to take to get there that quickly. Like, it sounds so beautiful getting there in 2 months.
Gather around as we spill the real tea on cybersecurity minus all the confusing jargon. I'm your host, Jara Rowe, and this podcast is where we cut through the confusion and get the truth about security and compliance. This is a podcast from Trava Security. It's time to spill the real tea on SOC 2. And I have one of my favorite cybersecurity and compliance experts here with me to give us a SOC 2 reality check, Marie. Hey, Marie.
Hey, Jara, happy to be back.
I'm so happy to have you back. And we've actually talked about SOC 2 on an episode together before.
Yes, a few times, I feel like, right?
We have. All right. So briefly introduce yourself just in case this is someone's first episode tuning in with us.
Yes, I'm Marie. I'm the manager of compliance advisory here at Trava. I help our customers get through whatever compliance framework that they throw our way, whether it be security or privacy. So that's my role.
Perfect person for this. All right, Marie. So in learning more about SOC 2 and looking up different questions that people have, I came across someone stating that one of their competitors got their SOC 2 certification in 2 months. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, is that true? Like, what was going on? So my first question for you is, when you hear someone say they got SOC 2 in 2 months, what is really going on?
It definitely sounds like more of a sales pitch to me. I don't think they're really ever saying the reality and like how not fun it was probably getting to that finish line. I think that is really something that's not portrayed in any way. I would say that there's probably a few things. There's so many different stories of how they probably got there that you could consider, where if they got there so quickly, just know that probably someone internally had to switch their focus on just focusing on that project for the meantime, which they might have had a drive. There could have been a lot of money at the end, like a contract or something that was really driving them to be ready in 2 months, because it probably became that person's majority of their full-time job if for that internal champion. And then I would say there also could have been like a solution of they probably hired a vendor where they just gave them a whole bunch of access that you wouldn't typically give that much access to for security reasons, where they really kind of took over their whole security features on their cloud and everything to get them there that quickly. Or there's also the possibility that they created the program really, really quick, kind of took all the templates they could, turned on all the tooling they possibly could, and it probably wasn't the best program they could have created, because you don't really hear people talk about the audit results from getting there in 2 months. You only really hear them talk about, we got the cert, but everyone can kind of get the cert, but you kind of get graded on all the different controls.
So it's possible, but there are 1,000 different things that may have been going on in the background to make it be true. So for a typical startup, what's the realistic timeline for SOC 2? And in your words of like a good experience, like a more fun, not so stressful as like a 2-month thing.
Realistically, I like to have about 6 months to a year to get you ready. And best case scenario is you do it quicker than you would have planned. So that's always something. If you have more time, if we have more time to get you there, we will do it. But I think having that realistic approach to a timeline makes your life easier and feel less stressed, and also have the chance to actually take the security portion of it seriously rather than the compliance piece of it too.
So again, you were saying like some people may have had templates and things like that in place. So if someone is starting at 0 versus someone already having some things in place, like what does that typically look like? And then how does that affect the timeline?
Yes. So something to keep in mind is whatever this program is you're creating, your whole business is going to be taking it on in some way. Everyone's going to have a role. Everyone's going to have to read the policies, take the trainings. So that's why I think sometimes having more time is more reasonable, because you're making a change to everyone's daily life, basically, when it comes to like the trainings and the policy specifically. And you want to build them in a way that your people better than like I would know them. So you want to build your program in a way that people are going to accept these policies and like actually take these trainings, give them adequate time to do all those things. So that's kind of something that's nice when you can have a more extended timeline than things that are promoted for like 2 months, where you give everyone the time to accept that new habit they're going to have to take on because it is a habit at the end of the day. It's going to be routine forever going forward if you want to keep that certification. So it doesn't really necessarily matter from going maybe from zero to like maybe having something established. In some cases, it's the same level of effort to me in a way because you're reevaluating what you have already created versus some people starting from zero. It's kind of nice in a way because we can just be like, just take on all this program if acceptable. But otherwise, sometimes it has to be more custom if you only have like partial things here and there.
Yeah. So, how do you know what someone already has in place? Like, I know that this is something you pretty much deal with day in and day out.
Usually, when we first engage with our customers at Trava, we do a sort of gap assessment on their chosen framework. So, really, it's just taking in if they have policies or not, reading through those policies and seeing the things that they're committing to. And then from those commitments, actually check to see if they truly do them. So, then we're kind of acting as the auditor, asking for the proof of do you do this control? Like, do you do access reviews, for example, on a quarterly basis, like your policy says? Or are you really just doing them kind of here and there when someone's onboarded or offboarded and not really having that formal documentation? So that's kind of how we take that approach.
All right, that's fantastic. Okay, so I know that there's like multiple types of SOC 2. So, can you explain the difference between SOC 2 type 1 and then type 2, and then how that impacts timelines and hoping that someone can get certified in 2 months?
Yes. So type one and type two, the way I always picture them is type one is just that frozen snapshot in time. So it's just if I were to take like a screenshot of us now, like that's our program, this is what it looks like. And then type two is actually testing all of those things. I think in a previous episode, I probably related it to like watching a movie, where if I pause the movie versus playing it, like we're playing the movie all the way through now and making sure it's going to have a good ending. And that's really the bigger difference is we're seeing if the controls operate effectively is how usually it's phrased for type 2. I would say how those impact timeline is for the type 2, you have to have at least 3 months to show. Most people will choose to go into 12 months. If they need it quicker, they'll pick the 3 month one, which isn't really recommended. But sometimes you have to do it for contract sakes. So when people say they got ready or they got you to SOC 2 in 2 months, really? Because that doesn't seem realistic because you have to have at least 3 months to show the observation. When that gets advertised, I just assume they have to be talking about just getting the type 1. They get you to that snapshot in 2 months, which that's reasonable in a way, but that's also comes to the one of the things where you might see more of those flaws because I personally like to get my customers ready for both type 1 and type 2 at the same time. I just think that's how it should be. Like most people start their type 2 after their type 1, so why wouldn't you get fully ready for both audits at the same time and then prove that you operate effectively? And in that case, you would be able to see if there's any issues of any controls that have to happen monthly or quarterly. Like you can tell if there's going to be issues ahead of time so that you have that cleaner report when it comes to the type 2.
Cool. So, does someone have to have the type 1 done before the type 2?
You can jump straight to type 2, which is something I don't normally recommend. It's nice to have that type 1 just to have your external auditor offer their opinion before you get to the type 2, because then you could have wasted a few months for no reason if they were like, you should have done this control a little differently. So it gives you that option for your auditor to kind of grade you before the bigger certification.
All right, that totally makes sense. And with this next question, I feel like I already caught a misconception myself, but what's the biggest misconception you hear about SOC 2 timelines?
I would just say that the misconception is not telling in their advertising how much effort it's going to take to get there that quickly. Like it sounds so beautiful getting there in 2 months, all the contracts that are going to help, like that you're going to get in from getting there in 2 months, but it's sometimes just not realistic, especially if the compliance hat isn't that person's full-time job, if it's something that's just kind of was passed to them and they also have a whole other role that takes up their 40 hours a week anyways, where that's the misconception of like you need that internal champion that can actually put in the work to get ready, and then their life will become easier once we get them to that readiness and we give them those new habits basically.
Yeah, and that's what I was picking up on as well, is that you may have seen your competitor say they got their certification, but is it type 1 or is it type 2? Because it definitely seems like it would be a little different timeline depending on the type.
Yeah. And I'm always like, and how was your sanity during that 2 months?
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
seem very fun to try
No,
to push it all in 2 months for sure. And especially talking to someone that literally does this for several companies, it doesn't seem like it would be very fun.
no, there's usually a lot of emotions where that's when I'm always like using that joke of like, I feel like a cybersecurity therapist in a way, because that's like, let's try to find the realistic approach here and then just kind of make that unique timeline.
Yeah, for sure. So you're already giving a little bit of this, but what factors speed things up and or slow them down when it comes to SOC 2 certification?
Yes, I would say the team bandwidth is really going to be the bigger component there. Time's always just the big component and money, but the time of your internal team, because we definitely need those internal champions to help us get you to that end goal. And those have to be sometimes more technical or the leadership team in some ways, because they have to own some controls where that can help it go faster, but also make it go slower at the same time, depending on people's willingness to help. And then I would say tooling is probably another piece where if you're willing to budget for certain tools to help make your life easier, that definitely helps the pace go faster, but can also slow it down because it does take time to onboard those new tools and get them fully configured, where that usually can't happen in like a 2 month time frame at all. Like everyone's been through a sales call, like a sales process. It doesn't usually take that short of time. You have to decide and know what you're purchasing, because it is a big purchase, because it's then going to probably become part of your program for a year and so on, or at least you'd want it to. But other things would really just be just the overall funding and like drive of the team, I would say. I think those are the two items.
Yeah, great. So another common question that I see that typical like startup leaders and stuff have about SOC 2 is if it's really needed to raise like VC and funding. So where does SOC 2 fit into that realm?
That's a very broad question where the answer is it just depends. It's going to depend on the VC firms you're talking to, where they really prioritize that. Because if your idea of your company is that great, they may or may not care, or they might be willing to help you budget and get you there after they already take you on, type of thing. So I would say it's really more so of a conversation. And as you start talking to more VCs, you might have the conversation of, well, we would have really liked you to have that SOC 2 certification or be in the process or thinking about it, where that's a lot of the times what I help my customers with of let's create that game plan, let's show them the realistic timeline, and then they're usually fine with that too. Communication is key in the real, like in real life, you know?
Communication is key. So, okay, we just got this SOC 2 reality check. So, Marie, let's see if we could like bust this myth or if I can wrap this up. It is possible to get a SOC 2 certification. We don't know if it's type 1 or type 2, but in 2 months. But it's probably not very fun for the team to accomplish that.
Exactly. It becomes kind of a full-time job for someone. Has to be someone internally kind of being the champion and like the owner, where that person will not have a good time usually for those 2 months. And it's kind of like that scenario of like the good, the bad, the ugly, and see it all in that time, where you could have extended it if possible. And some people, it's not possible. Like you have to do the 2 months, and that's life.
Yeah. Well, that was super helpful. Thank you for breaking down timelines when it comes to SOC 2. I'm so excited to continue this conversation with you in the next episode as we start talking a little bit more about readiness, prep, and efficient paths. And that's the tea on cybersecurity. If you like what you listen to, please leave a review. If you need anything else from me, head on over to Trava Security. Follow wherever you get your podcasts.